is what the study outline is. So that takes
Okay.
the information from what's in the book and it narrows it down. So the book is, the chapters are big, which I understand. So I definitely don't expect you to read every single word in the book, or study every single word that's in the book, because it is a lot. So what I did was create those study outlines to narrow down the information from the book. So it does exclude certain things, so that material is narrowed down for you. So then the test questions come from what's in those study outlines. And if there's ever anything that you see in the book that is not covered in the outline, then you won't need to know it for the test. So so that's why I made those, so that you could narrow down what it was that you were focusing on within the unit. So
So
that,
this test, I'm sorry.
oh no, go ahead.
So this test is on chapter 23 and just 23.
Yeah, so it's the majority of it is on chapter 23, but if you look in week 5, there's like that biochemistry review. There was a PowerPoint for it, and I can actually
Okay.
pull it up for you, because that's one of the things I can review with you guys. Um,
I just printed
so-
up something today. Is chapter 2, chemistry comes alive. What's that?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So that's it. And so there's a little bit of information on this test that comes from chapter 2. So actually in AEP 1, you would have covered chapter 2 and learning about like some of the basics of chemistry and learning about atoms and molecules and bonds. And
Okay.
it basically, this is a quick, just pulling out the necessary pieces from that chapter that you need to
Let me ask,
understand to know how the digestive system works, basically.
okay. So everything that's filled in is what we need to know, or do we still need to go in and fill in this whole packet?
If you're looking at the study outline, there are sections that are filled in. So basically it's everything. So
Okay.
there are areas where you'll fill in your own definitions and stuff. Other things are filled in for you,
Right.
but it's
Okay.
everything that's outlined in those handouts.
Okay. So
No.
these two are what we need to really. This is
Yep.
where the
Yep.
test is gonna. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yep. And so then, and I've said this in maybe a couple of announcements, but just so you know for sure, the best thing to do is to go, and I can even, if it helps, I can pull up our D2L class. Hold on. Here we go. So this is week 5 that I have up right here. So every single week you have pretty much the same organization of the information. There's the weekly overview, which tells you like all the things that we're going to talk about this week or that you're going to be learning about, and then all the things that you need to do for that week.
Okay.
And then just going back to the main page for the week. Then you also have the study outline, PowerPoints, and then the last thing is a web page with a lot of information in it. So this is one of the main places where you'll find the information to fill in that study outline, any areas that are not filled in. So you'll read about this. This defines the major types of organic compounds. Here's my little lecture that I've put in here. So you should be watching these because I'm basically lecturing on the content that is in the study outline.
Now, does it follow it like from the beginning to the
Pretty
end,
much,
or?
yeah. Starting right at the first page and then moving through. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it contains a lot of the same pictures that are in your PowerPoints, some of the same ones that are in the study outlines. And then in addition to my short lectures, like this is one of my little lectures, I also have, and I don't know if you've been watching these as you've been going through, but these are really good too. The crash course videos, they do a very good job of explaining anatomy and physiology. And then just keep going,
I
like
watch
have this.
them, but I just find myself, I don't know, I'd be confused. I think because I'm so used to like, I'm used to being in class, so it's like we just go off. I know you say your short video, is it, will you, I'm assuming in that short period of time, it's not everything that's in here is going to be, is going
No.
to be covered, correct? Just
Yeah,
certain.
so I tried to pick, have you watched them in the previous weeks?
I have, and
Okay,
I
so
was,
yeah, it's the same. I mean, this one's the same way. So it's, I mean, it would be hours if I was doing, and really our thinking is like a student isn't going to sit here and watch like a 2-hour video. So these, the little short lecture, like mini lectures that I have in here are, I tried to pick out like the most difficult topics for like each week and talked about those in my video. So you're right. It's not everything that's in the study outline. That would be hours long. Which is why I have all this other information in there for you.
okay,
So all of these are like the notes that you'll use to fill in the outline. If there's anything that's not in here, everything is found in the book. I mean, the book has everything and more, obviously.
right,
So you can always refer to that. But I just was trying to help you kind of narrow down all that information that is in the book by giving you this, like more focused stuff.
okay.
Okay.
So in the email that you sent me when you say you posted the pre-recorded lectures,
Yeah. So that's
th
the videos.
those are the what you just showed me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
So I'll show you for week 6, it's set up the exact same way. So here's your weekly overview of what to do, like what we're covering in the week and what assignments to do. Here's the study outline, here's the PowerPoint, and then here is the web page for that content.
okay,
So you can see a lot of the same pictures that are in your outline. Here's that chart that you were just asking about, all filled in. So
right,
use that. I mean, I feel like people aren't really going through necessarily. I mean, I can see what everyone's looking at and what you've accessed in the course and what you haven't. And people are skipping this. And this is really like where all of the information is to help you fill in that study outline to help you study. So definitely use this. Use all of this to fill in that study outline. Okay.
all right.
All right. Anything else about like where to find stuff in the course or what to do to study? Because if not, I can then kind of go through I can pull up a couple of the PowerPoints and just go over some of the main things that'll be covered for the
Okay,
test.
that sounds good.
Okay. All right. So let me share let me see. I'll share the PowerPoint. Hold on, I just have to pull it up. Give me one sec. I'm gonna do there's a the biochemistry review thing, which covers some of the stuff in chapter 2. Now there's not a ton of questions on this. So I'll go over some of the main points on here quickly, and then I'll pull up just the digestive system PowerPoint. So this one, I was kind of starting to say how you would have covered this information in A&P 1, But now for this class, most of us just kind of pull out the information that's relevant to the digestive system and just kind of go over that again because it's been maybe a year since you've had this. And what's really important from chapter 2 that relates to the digestive system is the major organic molecules, because these are the things that we're ingesting, like carbohydrates and proteins, and then knowing which enzymes break those down and what the components are that they get broken down into. And so the main things on the test that I would ask about would be like let me pull these up here. The major types of organic molecules. So it's carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids, and then ATP is the fifth one. The main things that we're ingesting are the first 4. And so basically just knowing like what a carbohydrate is and what it's made out of. A lot of the carbohydrates we eat, like starch, it's a polysaccharide, so it's a really, really big carbohydrate. The main building blocks of all carbohydrates are monosaccharides, which are these individual things right here. These are also known as simple sugars. So basically knowing just the organic molecule and what its basic components are or building blocks are that it's made out of is the important thing. Another example is lipids. So these are fats. The main lipid that we're consuming is triglycerides in our diets. And for most lipids, the building blocks are glycerol and fatty acids. And then the third big one are proteins, and proteins are made out of amino acids. So every protein has all these little tiny circles here are amino acids, and you put a big chain of those, link them all together, and that makes a protein. So those are examples of things that would be asked from this section, just those major organic molecules and what their building blocks are. Also knowing the types of chemical reactions. So with the digestive system, you're mainly breaking these things down into their small building blocks. So that's a decomposition reaction or a catabolic reaction, where you're taking a larger molecule and breaking it into smaller individual pieces. That's represented with this diagram here. You have a big glycogen molecule and you break it apart into all its individual components. That's decomposition. And the opposite of that is synthesis. So if you take a bunch of individual amino acids and you create bonds in between each one and you link them all together to create one bigger molecule, that's called synthesis. It's also called anabolism. So those are opposites of one another. And those are the two main types of chemical reactions that you'll see. But like I said, with the digestive system, we're mainly seeing these catabolic reactions where you're breaking bigger molecules, bigger nutrients down into their building blocks. Also, just knowing the difference between organic and inorganic. So something that's organic always contains carbon. And these tend to be bigger, like more complex molecules. Things that are inorganic don't contain carbon, and they tend to be smaller. So things like water and not all, but some acids and bases are inorganic. And then things that are organic are the molecules that I just was talking about, the things that we tend to ingest in our diet. So carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, those are organic. And then one other big thing is the importance of water in the body. Our bodies are made up of over half of our body is made up of water. And water is very involved with the digestive system. It's found in the digestive system, and it is part of the digestive reactions that are occurring. So water is involved when you're breaking down nutrients into their building blocks. It's also involved sometimes when you're building new molecules. And that's just one of the functions of water. I mean, it has many functions in the body. And so that's about it. This just goes through like proteins. The rest of this is the organic molecules. Enzymes are a type of protein. So enzymes are another big thing that's mentioned in chapter 2 that are obviously part of the digestive system. There's many different digestive enzymes that are doing their work within the GI tract. Most enzymes are released into the small intestine, and that's where the majority of digestion happens. So an enzyme just know that it is a protein. It's a certain type of protein that will either trigger a reaction or speed up a reaction in the body. And in this case, with the digestive system, it's causing these breakdown reactions where you're breaking down nutrient molecules into smaller pieces. So that's the main stuff from chapter 2. There's not a ton of questions. I think I said that on the test from that chapter, maybe 10 at the most, I would say. So, just knowing how that relates to the digestive system. And we can also pull up the other PowerPoint for the digestive system. And share that. Okay. So we kind of said in the beginning, like this unit is a little bit easier than the other two because a lot of it is just knowing the various structures that are part of the digestive system. A lot of the main structures are right here on this diagram. So knowing what structures are involved and then how they contribute to digestion. And also like just what types of digestion happen in which areas. So for instance, like in the mouth, that's the only place where ingestion happens. And that was like part of your discussion board last week is what's the difference between ingestion and digestion? I think all of you guys knew that. So ingestion is just taking food into the body. It's moving into the digestive system or into the GI tract. And the only place that occurs is through the mouth. So that's the one place where you have ingestion. So that's one thing that's significant about the mouth. And that's also where a lot of mechanical digestion happens. Oh, sorry. So mechanical digestion is the physical breakdown of food, like actually chopping up bigger pieces of food into smaller pieces. So that happens through the process of mastication, which is chewing. It also happens further down in the digestive tract, but one of the main places is in the mouth. And then also there's actually a lot that happens in the mouth because that's also where chemical digestion is initiated, saliva is secreted, and there are enzymes in saliva that can start just a little bit, but they start actually chemically breaking down nutrient molecules into smaller molecules or atoms. So anyway, just like the example I just gave you with the mouth. So knowing like what digestive processes are occurring in each location throughout the digestive tract. So you go from mouth and the digestive tract or the GI tract, gastrointestinal tract, that all means the same thing. So it starts with the mouth, and then you have the pharynx, which is the upper throat. So food goes through that, and then it'll go into the esophagus. And the esophagus is this long tube here that connects to the stomach. Stomach is here. And then coming out of the stomach is the small intestine. That is all coiled up right here in the middle. That's 10 feet long, even though it doesn't seem like it, just because it's all twisted up, it's able to occupy a smaller space. But you have roughly 10 feet of the small intestine, and then small intestine ends right here, and that's where the large intestine begins. So the large intestine frames, basically goes all around the outside of the small intestine. So it comes up this side. That's called the ascending colon. And then it goes across the top. That's called the transverse colon. And then it curves around. It goes down the other side. That's called the descending colon. And then it kind of curves and comes down. That's the rectum. And then the anus is the opening at the end of that. And that is the end of the digestive tract. So it goes from mouth to anus. There are other organs that are involved or that are considered part of the digestive system, but food does not actually go into them. Like food isn't passing through them. So food is only passing through the digestive tract, all the parts that I just went through. But there are other organs, like I said, that contribute to digestion. These are things like the liver, which is right here, the gallbladder shown in green. The pancreas is a big one. That's, you can see a lot of it is hidden behind the stomach, but you can see a little bit of it right here below the stomach. So food, again, food is not actually entering these organs, but they secrete various chemicals and enzymes that go into the digestive tract and that help with absorption and digestion and all of that. All right, so that's kind of the difference between the digestive tract and then all of those other organs are called accessory organs or accessory structures. These are just the activities that are involved with overall digestion. So we talked about ingestion is basically eating. Propulsion is moving food forward through the digestive tract. The mechanical breakdown, we talked about that, like physically chopping up or breaking apart pieces of food into smaller pieces. And then digestion, really that's the chemical digestion, and that involves enzymes. Enzymes chemically break food apart. They break molecules into smaller molecules or atoms. And then once that is done, then you can have absorption. So those smaller molecules or atoms can be absorbed across the wall of the digestive tract and into the bloodstream. And then defecation is where the body is getting rid of anything that can't be broken down or absorbed. It just gets excreted. And I mentioned this earlier, but the majority of digestion and the majority of absorption occurs in the small intestine. That's a big thing. So I'm not going to, we don't have enough time to really go through every single thing. I'm going to skip, like a lot of the anatomy is pretty easy to learn. But I'm trying to think what else would be helpful.
How about, I have a question.
Yeah.
The stimulatory events and inhibitory events?
Okay.
It's pretty far down.
Like when we're talking about food moving out of the stomach and
yeah, that slide right there.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just kind of do just a small.
Yeah, I definitely can. So this is in your, I'm going to actually refer to the study outline. So I cover exactly what is in there because that's what would be covered on the test. So this relates to food moving out of the stomach. Let me just get to that section in the outline. Okay. All right, here we go. So this is right here, regulation of the secretions in the stomach, gastric secretion. That's what this picture is referring to. So things that stimulate gastric secretions and conditions that would inhibit gastric secretions. So first of all, gastric secretions are all the things that are all the chemicals and enzymes that are secreted in the stomach. So secretions include the acid, hydrochloric acid gets secreted. There's a couple of enzymes that get secreted. So that's what this is referring to. And obviously you want those secretions to happen when food is about to enter the stomach and when food is in the stomach, because you need those secretions to aid in digestion. But then when there's not any food in the stomach, once it's left the stomach, then you don't need those secretions anymore. So that's when you would want them to be inhibited. So there's like these two phases, things that are stimulating these secretions, like when food is in the stomach, and then stimuli that are inhibiting the secretions. When there's no food in there, you don't need the secretions to continue being secreted. Okay, so there are 3 phases for gastric secretion. The first one is the cephalic or reflex phase. And cephalic refers to the head. So this is basically when you are just thinking about eating, or you see food and that makes you think about eating. But there's not actually food, you haven't actually eaten yet, or there's no food in your stomach yet. But even when you just think about food, this begins. And there's a nerve called the vagus nerve that's actually, and I'm not going to ask you tons of details related to this diagram, but just knowing that within the cephalic phase, when you see food, when you think about food, the vagus nerve actually travels. It's a cranial nerve and it goes from your brain all the way down to your digestive tract. So it connects to the stomach. And that nerve will stimulate the secretion of gastric chemicals and gastric enzymes just to prepare your body for digestion. Even if you haven't eaten yet, you're thinking about it. So your body's already preparing. So that's all that phase is. Just cephalic is your brain thinking about eating, and then you start secreting those chemicals and enzymes in the stomach. So then the next one should make sense. The gastric phase is when you've eaten. So now food actually is in your stomach. And there's a couple things that happen when food enters the stomach. There's really 2 main things that happen, 2 changes that take place in the stomach that also trigger the stomach to secrete more of these chemicals and these enzymes. Now you need even more because you have food, you've actually eaten. So now you have food in the stomach. So those 2 changes that occur when you've eaten are that, first of all, your stomach it starts out pretty small, but when you eat, it can stretch and it can get pretty large actually. So there are stretch receptors that get stimulated when you eat. So when you eat and food fills the stomach, it gets bigger and bigger, and that activates these stretch receptors. So when they get stretched, that stimulates the release of enzymes and chemicals in the stomach. As soon as they get stretched, your body knows that means that food has entered the stomach and it needs to secrete more of these chemicals and these enzymes. Okay. The other change that happens is that there are chemoreceptors also in the stomach. So you've got those stretch receptors, and you also have chemoreceptors. And chemoreceptors monitor chemical changes. So these in particular, they monitor the pH in the stomach. And when food, normally the stomach is very acidic because you have hydrochloric acid in your stomach. But when food enters the stomach, the pH actually changes. It gets higher, gets a little bit less acidic. So when that change is detected, your body recognizes now that there's definitely food in the stomach, so it triggers the secretion of even more gastric juice, more gastric enzymes, more chemicals. So both of those changes happen when food enters the stomach, and it causes even more secretion. Okay, does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then the last phase is called, and I'll show you that on the PowerPoint right here. It's called the intestinal phase. So in the intestinal phase, this is now when food is leaving the stomach and entering the intestines. It's going into the small intestine.
Okay.
So at this point, you basically have things that are going to stop gastric secretion, and then you'll want to turn on the secretions in the small intestine. Now that food has left the stomach, you don't need to continue secreting chemicals and enzymes in the stomach because there's no food there anymore. So there's something called, and it might be, let me see if it's on here. Yeah, it's right here. It's called the enterogastric reflex. So entero, that part of the word refers to intestines, and gastric refers to stomach. So basically this reflex involves neurons from the small intestine inhibiting the secretion of gastric chemicals and enzymes. So basically what's happening is once your body detects that food has left the stomach and now has entered the small intestine will send a signal back up to the stomach. And that's what this is. It's the enterogastric reflex, is the signal to the stomach saying, hey, food is now in the small intestine. You can stop secreting all this stuff because food is no longer there. Food is now in the small intestine. So it's really just the communication from the small intestine to the stomach saying you can stop, and it inhibits it, it turns it off because now food has moved into the small intestine. There are also a couple hormones that, and they're listed here. Secretin is one. Cholecystokinin, CCK, is another. These are also listed in your outline. But these hormones also inhibit the secretion of gastric chemicals. So you've got two things just to make sure that it stops because it's not needed anymore. You have that reflex, that enterogastric reflex, which is just basically a nerve impulse being sent from the small intestine to the stomach, stopping the secretion of gastric chemicals. But you also have hormones that do the same thing just to make sure that it stops because it's not needed anymore. Okay, so hopefully that helped a little bit.
It did.
Okay, good. That's a pretty small component on the test, but there probably are, one or two questions about it. So, and it is a little tricky. That's one of the physiology sections that is a little tricky. So that was good to ask about that. Trying to think what else is significant down, like the rest of this is just knowing the anatomy. Here's the pancreas. So here are a couple pictures of the pancreas. Normally the stomach is right here. So the stomach blocks most of the pancreas. But the pancreas is really important because this is what secretes almost all of the digestive enzymes that are chemically breaking down food molecules. And all the enzymes from the pancreas go through this duct right here, this green duct, and that connects to the small intestine. This is the first little piece of the small intestine. So all those enzymes get ducted right into here, and they do their job in the small intestine. The function of so the other thing is you have the liver and you have the gallbladder, that little green organ, and you can see it a little bit better from the backside. The gallbladder is kind of hidden underneath of the liver. So the liver produces bile, and then bile, after it's made in the liver, it gets sent into the gallbladder to be stored for whenever your body needs it. And bile is only needed to help with the digestion of fats or lipids. So it's not needed to help digest carbohydrates or proteins or anything else. It's only needed to help with the digestion of fat. So if there's not any fat present in the food that you just ingested, bile is not going to be secreted. But if there is, then it will be secreted, and it just comes out of the gallbladder. It goes through a little duct and it gets sent into the small intestine. And what it does is just kind of like what this picture is showing you. It'll break down a large like droplet or large just glob of fat, and it'll help to break it up into smaller pieces. And then once it is broken up into smaller pieces, like you can see right here, it just makes it much easier for the digestive enzymes to then break it down even further. So it's the physical breaking apart of fat. And then digestive enzymes will come in and break it down completely. And then for the large intestine, this is the last component of the digestive tract. Here's the large intestine all by itself. It has all those different parts that I sort of mentioned when we were going through initially the components of the digestive tract. So the ascending colon, the transverse colon, descending colon. It's here where you'll have a like maybe a little bit more breakdown of food, but most digestion has happened already by the time food gets to the large intestine. There are bacteria that live in the large intestine, and they will, any digestion that happens here is done by those bacteria. So they actually aid in a little bit of digestion. But again, there's not a whole lot that happens there. There is absorption that takes place in the large intestine. This is where a lot of water gets absorbed. So really up until this point, your food, or what's remaining of your food, because now it's been mostly broken down and it's been mixed up with water and enzymes and chemicals, it is a liquid up all the way until it moves into the large intestine. So that liquid form of food is called chyme. That is it's in the book, and that's written in your study outline. But then when that chyme enters the large intestine, there is a lot of water that gets absorbed, and then it becomes a solid because your body has absorbed a lot of the water from that. So yeah, that's one of the main things that happens in the large intestine is the absorption of water, and some ions go along with the water that gets absorbed. So chyme stays in the large intestine for several hours. And after all that time, it does become a solid, like I said, because of all that absorption. And after that point, it's called feces. So that's what gets excreted from the body. And that's basically it. I can go back and discuss anything else if there's anything you can think of.
Okay.
Is there like any diagrams or matching in the exam?
Yep. That was in, you'll have to look at, and I can pull it up. It's right in your, do you know where the test review is in D2L. I post a test review.
Oh yeah, I haven't looked at it yet.
Okay. It's in there, but I can check. Let me check real quick. There is something like that. Let me see. I'm pulling it up right now. Okay, so yeah, I always, and just so you know, I almost always have diagrams and matching. So obviously you're starting to get used to the test format now. There's always going to be a lot of multiple choice, and then there's always going to be matching, a couple matching sections and diagrams. So there still will this time. There's 3 matching sections, and I tell you what they are covering. So one is just structures that are part of the digestive system anatomy, and then digestive secretions. So that would involve maybe matching the secretion, like Tasia, what we were talking about, like matching the secretion to what it does.
Okay.
So remember, I gave you the example, like maybe on one side, I'll say, this is the chemical necessary for vitamin B12 absorption. And then that would be matched up with intrinsic factor. So just
Okay.
matching the chemicals or enzymes up with their function. That's another matching section. And a lot of that would be covered in those charts. So you can study those charts that are in your study outlines to review for that matching. And then the last one is digestive processes. So that would be what I went over, like ingestion, mechanical digestion, chemical digestion, absorption, defecation. So those are the main digestive processes. So just matching them up with like their description or definition. So those are your 3 matching sections. And then there are 3 diagrams of digestive structures. And to help you review for that, you can, I gave you a couple of figures in the textbook to refer to. So they'll be, if not the exact same, very similar. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. My phone ringing goes to my computer. So yes, so study those figures that I listed. They're listed in the review sheet. And
I have a question.
yeah,
On the matching part, that whole matching section, how many points is it worth?
it depends on the number. So each one is a point. So like
Okay, so each one is
yeah, each one's a point. That's it.
okay. I wasn't sure. I was trying to count in my head when I opened.
Yeah, basically every single question is worth a point. So every multiple choice is a point. And then within the matching section, if there's like 5 terms that you're matching up, each one would be a point. So it would be 5 points total.
Okay.
But you get points for each one you get correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so everything is like a point. There's nothing crazy.
Okay.
And then for the diagrams, it's the same thing. Everything you match up correctly is a point. All right.
So if we get to the end of the test and we skip the question, will it go back to the question we skipped?
Yes, you can always go back. Yeah.
Okay.
But
only at the end, correct?
You can go back whenever, actually.